Testing 1 2 3. Testing.
It's 1 o'clock.
It is. I try to be punctual. How you doing, sir?
Well, I'm okay. I got up early and took my wife to BART in Concord so she can get to the airport to fly to Canada to see her mom and her family. So, and I did the laundry. I hung it out. So I'm good to go. And I reviewed your emails, and I'm ready for your questions.
Well, first off, I did not have the luxury of reading your book of what a private eye actually does. But my mother and I used to watch Magnum PI when I was in grade school. And it was one of our favorite shows. So can you just take 1 minute to dispel what a private eye does and doesn't do? It seems like that lifestyle is probably in real life more glamorous than it is, right?
Exactly. Well, you use words private detective. I'm not a detective. I'm an investigator. I find stuff, by the hour. And the glamour part of it, the Ferrari with Magnum and getting in fights and falling down and shooting people and all of that, kicking in doors, that may have been back during the Maltese Falcon. And it's no longer here today in our society of, how should I say, anarchy. And COVID didn't help much. And it also infiltrated the rental market. The COVID society and all of its dysfunction. And I don't know what, and I'm a sociologist. I think I'm going to know and be able to predict what may happen. I can't anymore because the rampant crime and people in general, they're no longer patient. There's no more compassion than once was. But I think it's too many laws and too much crime that is accelerating to a point where people are dying every day. More so than I've ever seen it. And I have an associate in criminology. There's not one answer. And I think a lot of my work has to do with collecting, assembling, and developing information for legal purposes, for attorneys, real estate folks, business people. And there's nothing really illegal that we do. It's public record. And we rely on algorithms of online systems that we populate based on our inquiry and identifying information that we have at hand. And what we may do when we initiate a search of anything or anyone is to obtain the identifiers of the individual or the business, the address, which is crucial, phone number. And all that can be put together into a report based on a couple systems that I use that have 100 billion records that is collected from real estate companies, from tax liens, from the city, government, DBAs, and the internet. That's a mouthful, huh?
Well, however unpredictable human behavior is, Daniel likes to say one of his great phrases is, the greatest predictor of dysfunction is prior acts, right? So we can at least identify those, and we can get the broad strokes of somebody's history, right?
Yeah, and those are the predictors that may assist you in making a determination of maybe who to rent to, who not to, based on A, B, C, and D. And whatever decisions realtors make uh, or landlords, if I may, or anyone, even in relationships. They have to gauge, they have to evaluate, they have to collect that information, or do they go ahead and just jump into it? Which, out of need, a financial need for landlords, they need to rent that place out, like right now.
I'm just wondering if when we're talking about the screening process, why would they go to a private investigator? I mean, I'm assuming you charge a lot of money to do this. Why not? Why not use other tools and just do a cursory search? Do you do a lot of work in terms of pre-tenancy?
Pretext or pretense?
Pre-tenancy?
Oh yeah, it's about 50% of my business right now.
Oh really?
Yeah, and Dan is one of my favorite clients. I've known him for over 20 years, and we've done some interesting cases. We've testified at Superior Court and the Rent Board. Yeah, and I met his brother. I know. I just finished a case with what's her name? The attorney that works with Dan. I can't remember her name, but we just finished this.
Catherine?
Yeah, Quintel. We did to find the people. We kind of found them, and the client kind of helped out, and then we sat on the house or the apartment like for a week at different intervals, more like 4 hours and like at 6 or 5 at night, hoping that they'd come out. But they're there because the car is parked there every day at different locations around the block. But that's one piece of the puzzle that may be joined with other pieces of the puzzle, which would be the database information I developed and the addresses, whatever the client has developed. And Catherine's handling that one. And she's got all the information in the report. I've done a lot of interesting cases that involve human error and getting the background of people who have made mistakes along the way. And then you have to prove it empirically through your senses and by law. But can you deny somebody because they have a criminal record, a tenancy? Like you had mentioned in the email, it's quite a bit of research you have done. But how tangible is that? How much evidence is that going to be enough to not to have that person come in, or are you going to be sued for discrimination for some other reason?
Yeah, I think the best appropriate response is, and less communication is more. And so you simply would say that we appreciate your application. We found a more suitable candidate. But I don't want to squander your time, so I'll get to my pre-canned questions, which is, can you talk about instances where you get involved when? So now we were talking pre-tenancy. Now let's say the tenant now is ushered into the rental unit and is creating a big problem, and the landlord obviously is constrained with the ability to enter it, but somehow a private eye like you can discover and document something nefarious going on. I'm assuming you have your own legal constraints, right? Like, let's say somebody's doing drug dealing, doing something that's egregious.
And I can talk about that because, cameras, for instance. Can you utilize cameras? I mentioned that in my article. And providing this public area. There was someone I mentioned in the article was sued, and they won $50,000. It was a pair of lawyers that were tenants from a guy I grew up with. And he got stuck on stupid because he was using a audio tape recorder while he was interviewing them in the basement of the garage. And shame on you, that's illegal under 632 PC and the Title 18 and some other laws. and I think I can say that I'm pretty much done.
So, I mean, cameras can be used with the exception of common areas, right? You can't put a camera, and then there's a reasonable expectation of privacy, right? I mean, I guess that would be the legal term, right?
Right. The reasonable expectation of privacy. So you've got it in the hallway, and it's a common area, people are walking back and forth. That also includes guests. And that's going to be an area in which we'll capture people, places, and events that occur on the property. How many people in and out? Is there illegal activity? Drugs, prostitution? Are they subletting? Who is that person? And then my job is to figure out who it is. And that's where the surveillance, physical, on-site surveillance takes place.
Okay.
Which is always, not so much as a last resort, but I don't promote that initially because it gets really expensive at $1,000 a day plus expenses. And then what? But if we have an address, for instance, and we've done a lot of this with Dan and other attorneys, we have an address developed through my databases and other means, and we're sure they are there at that address. So we'll set up early in the morning and watch them leave. Videotape it. Come back in the late afternoon, watch them return. Stick it out the first day, maybe till 10 at night, okay? Then come back the next day, early, and watch them leave again. They spent the night. And that's the conclusion, but it's also... And we do that every other day for 2 weeks. We cover every day, 7 days, every other day. And that's how I've come up with that process by doing it every other day. And then, how can you back out of that? I was just visiting my friend, my girlfriend.
And the surveillance footage is admissible? It's not contested in court?
Well, they can contest whatever they want, but if I'm a licensed state licensed investigator, and I'm using a handycam video camera, and we're doing it and not getting detected, and we do it for a period of time, that's going to be evidence. What are they going to do? I've never seen anyone really contest that, other than they felt it was an invasion. And even if they did, I know the law.
Well, I'm just wondering where you come in, because the situation has to be pretty bad to hire you, right?
Well, not so much bad, Jim, as it is necessity, because nothing else seems to be working. Letters, lawyers, written statements from neighbors, all that comes together. But then the hands are tied to the landlord. What do we do? What can we do? Well, you sit on them and see what they're doing and where they are, and maybe a car is registered at that new address that was developed. That's an automated name index, they call it. And then there's the plate, and it's registered at that address. If no record occurs, then they don't have a record of a vehicle registered at that new address that was developed. And the new address is developed generally by me or the landlord, just by their own internet searches or Google or whatever they're attempting to do. And some of my databases have 40 to 100 billion would be records that are collected over time, people, places, and events, and from driving records to lawsuits to utilities. In December of last year, I used to come back on the database with cable. I'd come back with a specific PAC Bell or AT&T phone line, and it would say landline. Now that comes up occasionally, but people, even like myself, use a voice over internet protocol. That's a box, which I'm looking at right here, that the number you called, my 621 number, I've had for 42 years. But now it's in a box. And I've got connected to a regular phone line from Radio Shack. And I found out just good afternoon or good morning keeps away from the word hello, and then the call gets dropped. I don't have to worry about it.
Oh, interesting. I get a lot of those calls, and my wife has actually been susceptible to actually volunteering information to bad actors.
Would you like to hear a story that happened to me yesterday at my daughter's? I'm trying to book a hotel for her wedding's going to be in San Jose, so they've got their room booked, and my other daughter, and a few other family members. And so I go to book it, and I'm using one of my credit cards, and it gets kicked back. And I go, well, what happened here? So I called, I think it was Capital One or something, and I actually got, the first question I asked the credit card companies, where are you located? Oh, I could be in Central America. You're not going to get a lot of results or information from folks that are at call centers because they don't have access as much information as someone you call directly. So yesterday I called the number on the back of the card, and it was, where you look at Florida, and we're talking, and my oldest daughter lives there, and we were chatting up, just trying to figure out who are you and where are you? And it turns out that company that ran up my card for $652 for 2 nights, which didn't make sense. So my daughter Googled the name of this company on my card, and we figured out through blogs of that particular company, it's a scam. And it's called CCI Star Hotels RES. So I get dinged 652, and then 652 gets credited back to my account. And I called them and they said, well, you don't have to worry about it. You can change your card number. And I said, well, I don't want to go through all that. But I got the credit back almost immediately. And then following up with it, what happens is that there's not much I can do until after it is put onto my card. But looking at the card, it was never put on the card.
Yeah, well, I can easily identify these people, and I actually have fun with them, and I continue the conversation because I just want to. I just want to fuck with them, right? Yeah, now my wife will, will get a call from IRS from India or wherever they're from, and she'll actually give them her social security number, and I said, "How stupid are you?" But I get calls like that, and I like to play around. I'll be on the phone with them for 20 minutes, just messing with them.
Yeah, I have the same mindset occasionally. If I have a couple beers in the middle of the night when they're calling me, I'm going, okay, now what? You're calling me? What's your name? Joe? Is Sam there? No. Who's calling? ABC company and. Well, who's this?
Well, they're stupid. They're stupid too because they'll say, "What? Okay, here's my social security number. What's your name?" I say Barack Obama. What's your address? 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and they go along with it. But so at any rate, I guess we're going far afield. As far as geez, I'm losing my train of thought here. Well, one thing that I could immediately think of is disability status. We've had a lot of issues with, not me, Daniel. Apparently, they're elevated to another level. If somebody claims that they're disabled, elderly, I guess the age is verifiable. But are there bogus claims about that? In terms of a protected status?
Yeah, because what they're trying to do is not pay rent or minimize it. So I'm disabled, you can't raise my rent. Well, not if we hire the investigator who will follow you around while you're doing the running around Lake Merced. We're doing a 10K. And that's where we do the surveillance part. Well, I can't walk, I can't see, and then they're driving. That's always a good one. But I think the most important part in superior courts I have online, and I know the ones that are not. Criminal records, for instance, in Alameda County, you have to go there. That's how the rules played. San Francisco, it used to be that way. But now, you can go on Superior Court and click criminal, and, it looks like the old civil online, so it is. But you put in the first two letters of the last name and the first two letters of the first name, and you click go. And if there's a record, you'll see a list of people with those letters in front of their first and last month, and there's your person. There it is. And that's a free search. Where when I run up the database stuff, I will get some stuff like at a Santa Rita prison, Alameda, because they were booked over there, and it's on my database. It's been filed. It's an algorithm through my sources that come through the database. So, but what do you know about it? You physically have to go and request the file. Another example would be a ticket, a speeding ticket, parking ticket. Where'd you get the parking ticket at? Right in front of the house that you say you don't, your new place of residence. And if you get a speeding ticket, we've had quite a few of these, and you pull the ticket, provided they're going to release it to you, and there's the address listed on the ticket.
But as a general statement, I've said this in many times, many venues. I said that in this wokeness, in this culture of forgiveness and amnesty, it's becoming harder and harder to identify rental risks because things are concealed, and that comes in many forms and fashions. But would you agree that it's becoming more difficult to identify rental risks?
Absolutely. And because now people are aware of things they do and what they don't do. For instance, applying for credit. As soon as you do that your credit file is updated, and so is your information. And if you apply for a PG&E or a phone line or cable, that is updated. Now, I mentioned earlier that we would say cable, would say Xfinity or something. That's no longer available because the PUC, either federal or state, cracked down on it. It could have been federal. And in December of last year, you can't get that information anymore on phone and cable. But the ones I actually have phone stuff, but I call it phone stuff because people can open and close a phone number with a phone call. And they'll go to the extreme of having their number they've had for years. And just go ahead and call them, change it over to the address that's in existence of where I live, and that's enough for the tenant to say, yeah, I live here, look at this is my phone bill. And it's not true. It's what they told them. And that's always an issue, but back to the court records, I mean, that's proof positive. Now, the homeowner's exemption is evidence that if I own a home and I got a homeowner's exempted, I'm getting a tax deduction. That's saying, yes, I live here. And the Brent board looks upon that as real evidence for the landlord. It doesn't mean that their legal counsel can come in and say, oh, well, that was because of A, B, C, D, and E. And if you work with Dan, you know how slippery some of these tenants can be. But, you have to, with a grain of salt, all tenants are good until proved otherwise.
Well, you touched on something that is, I'm going off script here, but another impromptu question I have is, do you find that people forge documents and that, they just, for example, this has largely been resolved under state law, but sometimes people will get a fake certificate that they need a comfort animal online, right? Or they'll just slap a medical logo on the top saying that this tenant needs a a comfort animal. Do you find a lot of forgery going on, or tenants just using false, bogus documentation?
Sure, it happens, and unfortunately, the landlord. To what extent are they going to go out and try to prove that? Hiring me at $125 an hour, contacting the medical information bureau, or contacting people that, like the doctor. And the doctors and medical people are not going to share medical history with anyone. So it's something that if they can get away with it, they will. But I think it goes back to a tenant trying to escape the law or get out of having their rent raised, or just saying, no, I live there. But if they live there, then they shouldn't be having driver's licenses in the other state. They shouldn't be coming up on databases. They shouldn't have a lawsuit with an address that says the new address, which I developed through our databases. But I mean, I'm kind of talking in a circle because it is a vicious cycle. Because you need to prove it, and it's going to cost money and time. And so what do? We hire lawyers and private investigators. Some landlords would prefer to do that. Want to spend any money because it's going to cost them more in the long term than just getting the tenant to move or raise the rent and bring it up. It could be up at market rate. What do you do?
Yeah. Well, moving forward, we've been talking about those tenants applying for a rental unit. They're not yet a tenant. And then we've been talking about tenants that are already implanted. What about the runaway tenant?
Yeah.
Who's just leaves like a thief in the night? Of course, there's laws about how to dispose of their personal property. It's not finders keepers. We talked a lot about that, but how exuberant should landlords be in finding them? I'm assuming somebody like Sam Brown can find them.
Yeah.
If they just leave, they break their lease, they owe $80,000 in past due rent. Do you have any experience with that?
And I've gotten a few calls lately on that because I call them a ghost tenant. The tenant who's supposed to be there is ghosting the landlord, and they could have went out and gotten married, bought a house, and moved out of state. Well, that's where I come in with some of the database research. But then, how are you going to prove that they are in Texas, living on Cherry Lane in Dallas? And you're going to have to go out there or send somebody close by and sit on the house, make a movie. And that gets expensive. And pull records up in that county that they may have registered to vote, which is always something that can be utilized. And now they're requiring driver's license numbers, full dates of birth before you can even make the inquiry.
Well, I think what you're referring to is like a pet-a-terre, but and that's a good point. But what I'm talking about, my original thought was people that just abandon the place.
They leave, and all their furniture and clothing, and then you go to, you have to have a due diligence to try to find them. That costs money. And okay, we can't find them. They've been gone for 90 days or 6 months or even a year. What do we do with the pile of stuff in the unit? And as soon as you try to dispose of it, the tenant appears. You can't throw away my stuff, then they're sued. So in the lease itself, you should have it outlined that in the event of abandonment, in other words, of the premise, we have the right to dispose of anything left in the unit.
Well, that's actually prescribed, I think, in state law. I'm not so much worried about that. I'm just talking about. I guess it would take some investigative work. It would take some to determine if or not the tenant is lead. I mean, it's been a problem where somebody can say, well, I'm not being very articulate now. I guess if when we talk about unauthorized subletting, because and I talked about this from a distance, but I don't know how common it is, but it seems like there were some cases where the tenant just subletted their place out because they worked for Google, and Google or some tech company said essentially, you don't have to return to the mothership, you don't have to return to the office. So then they went out to North Dakota, wherever they went, and said now they're subletting it to somebody else. I'm assuming that's where you come in to say that, the person originally named on the lease is not living there, but he or she subletted it out to John or Jane Doe, right?
Right. And how we do that, the first step, and they have the suspicion, other people living there, we don't know who they are. Who are they? But what we do is we run the address, and by running the address, hopefully we'll come up with an identifier.
Okay.
And that information we gather, collect, and then we run that information. If we have, say, three people named, three persons' names are listed, and one of them doesn't have any identifier. Well, maybe because they're not legal, because it's derived in the U.S., or some other thing that they're avoiding getting on their gravy train, and that has with them not wanting to be. That's always pretty suspicious for me.
So it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, reverting back to my original question about the glamour.
Right.
Most of your time is not spent sitting in a surveillance van, but doing a technology-based query on people.
That's primarily what I do, but then as a generation San Francisco or so, I know everybody. So that helps me out, too, with people I know. But, when I was really active, we're talking with 10 employees and 10 teachers with my school, and I worked my 18-hour days, 7 days a week. There was a lot of opportunity for me to grow the business, and I took advantage of it. But now most people, it's always been a collection of retired cops in the business. That's how private investigators got into the business, because they had experience. So therefore, they started, to take the state exam and start their own business. But I think most people in the industry now, they have a niche of some kind. And a lot do criminal defense. And there are panels for each county that will have a lot of money available for the public defender's office to pay private investigators $50 to $75 an hour to go and defend this unfortunate person who was arrested. But there's another person who got arrested with him. That becomes a conflict. So there are conflict panels on these counties. Where San Mateo has a conflict panel specifically for public defenders. But here we are off sliding off the conveyor belt again. But the industry is something that I take pride in being in. But there's also a percentage of folks that just want to make a dollar at it.
Understood. I'm a big fan of NYPD Blue and all of these cop shows. I understand what you're saying. And I don't want to squander too much more of your time, but just continuing on the theme of the runaway tenant. One thing that I said is, landlords have been the only sector of the economy that have been asked to provide a free service, which is housing, right? And then we have to go after rent debt. I don't think that's necessarily Daniel's wheelhouse. Maybe you can get a collections attorney, but overall, I think that it's just a losing proposition. You're only going to collect pennies on the dollar, and you can go to small claims court, you can go to civil court, but I don't know how worthwhile it is to really chase people. Let's say the runaway tenant we were just talking about. They just get up and leave. You got to find them, and now you got to collect rent debt. I suppose that some of them have an upward trajectory in life, and Daniel will sometimes alert clients to good news that the judgment is obtained 10 years later. They have a good job. They're making money. They apply for a car loan. They apply for a mortgage, and they want to remove the stain of the blemish on their credit report. And so they pay the judgment amount. But how realistic is it? I mean, percentage-wise, did somebody actually will pay the debt even if a judgment is obtained? I guess it depends on their status in life, but do you think it's worthwhile to go after somebody that just left and they owe rent debt? I mean, is it economically, is there a good return on investment to hire a private investigator like yourself?
Yeah, because you want to find out, is it worth pursuing in Superior Court, for instance. $30,000 in background. Due to COVID here, people just stopped paying rent. And now they're being put on notice that you got to pay rent now, and all of a sudden the rent's coming up. And they're coming up with it. But how do we get the back rent? And then we get a judgment. And judgments are good for only 10 years, and then they expire unless you go back to court and renew it. And some people don't renew it, and then they lost out. But what you want to find out, maybe in the next 2 or 3 years after they took off, they did buy a house, and they have a new job, garnish the wages. But as soon as you garnish wages, the next day they quit their job. And that's unfortunately sad, but it is reality.
Okay, well, I think he answered all my questions. In terms of, it seems to me like, well, just being streetwise, it's common sense. When you start trying to prove, I'm imagining you're packing when you're on these investigations, but when you're trying to prove criminal activity, drug dealing, and so forth, a lot of potential witnesses get scared. They don't want to talk, right?
That's right. And I don't want to go into an environment personally because of my age. I'm a big guy. I got 4 years of karate and Wing Chun, but I'm not going to go into an area, and I don't carry a gun. I have a shotgun at home, and that's all I have, and I've never used it or shot it. But I think going into a drug-infested area on a landlord-tenant situation, I would require 2 people, or I may just say, no, I'm not going to do that. It's going to cost you $250 an hour for us to sit there. And then what? There are people visiting, and maybe it's only for sex and not drugs. You don't know unless you get in the apartment. We put pinhole cameras in an apartment building, facing the other door and catching people in and out. But all you're doing is catching people in and out. You document how many people came in and out over a period of time, and then what? They have a lot of visitors. Yeah, it's a, as you mentioned, Daniel's wheelhouse. There's something that he'll take on cases, and there's some cases he just won't. And I'm kind of like that too when it comes to drug cases. I did an internship. I worked drug diversion with San Francisco Probation Department, and I grew up in the Mission.
Well, one thing he said in a past webinar was, if you just merely alert them that the landlord knows of the activity, you serve them a 3-day notice to quit. They want to take their business elsewhere. They want to get out. They want to get out of there. Do you find that to be true?
No, because drug dealers are going to do what they're going to do regardless of the landlord and their lawyers. They're in business to make profit, and they don't care who they hurt, physically or mentally.
I'm saying they're exposed. So when a landlord informs them, I know what you're doing. Here's a 3-day notice to quit. Do they automatically leave? It would seem to me that they would like to leave. They would like to flee, right?
Yeah, I mean, what are they going to do? You got to get out because you're dealing dope. No, we're not. Prove it. Example over at Geneva Towers. If you remember that tower, they shut it. They knocked it down finally over by Sunnydale Project, and that was a big drug dealing place at the top. And the kids were outside being the lookouts, and they could tell when the cops were coming. That guy looks like a cop. He's coming up the stairs, coming up the elevator. So that just went on for decades. There's nothing you could do. So they decided just to close down the building, knock it down. But, every neighborhood in San Francisco, I've lived in a lot of them. And you got to be careful when you go into neighborhoods. And, I do look kind of like a cop. I'm 6'4", 240, white, burly. But I'm not going to, not necessarily that means you're a cop, but I can be identified as someone that may look like law enforcement and then not be able to sit there or go knock on the door. It's a cop at the door, and I don't want to get shot first.
Yes, I guess the term is safety first. Okay, well, this has been very instructive. My pre-canned questions were answered thoroughly, if not more. Am I missing anything else?
Probably more time and more money, like everybody else. No, I'm just kidding. My oldest daughter, she has an English literature degree from UC Santa Barbara, and then she has an MBA in marketing from the University of San Francisco, and a past president of 3 stock brokerage companies. I did well with her. And she said, Dad, there's an article, if you want me to prove it before it gets sent out, I'll be more than happy to. She's in Vegas now. She'll be back in Florida tomorrow or something. But if you wanted to put that together as a skeleton or something and want her to take a look at it, she'd volunteer and do it. She's looked over the articles that I've written before. And she's, and reports. But, this is what you do. Whether you want somebody that's outside looking at it before it's even in the print, that'd be up to you.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's always good to have a fresh pair of eyes. Daniel has the attorney, not an official attorney working for a firm. He's not on the roster, but he contracts out these attorneys. And there's a guy, Robert Cohen, and the guy is amazing. He's not only an attorney, but he also used to be an editor of the Wall Street Journal. So he tends to butcher my stuff as a wordsmith. But I'll put together a piece based on our conversation today. Thanks for your valuable time. And I'll shoot it over to you, and maybe have your daughter take a look at it.
Will do. And you'll probably get to it over the weekend.
Yeah. No rush.
Well, we got to get together for a brew someday here. Where do you live?
I'm in upstate New York. What had happened is I designed Daniel's website many years ago. I was a former paralegal, so I designed his website. And then I came out with the proposal. Well, geez, I love the law. How about you keep me on board, and I can provide information to your clients on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
And that's what he agreed to. He flew me out to California for his son's bar mitzvah event. So I got the chance to meet everybody, meet the team. And now I'm a lifer.
Well, when you're in town, call downtown Sam Brown. That's what they call me.
Downtown Sam Brown.
Downtown Sam Brown.
It's got a nice ring to it.
Yeah, a lot of my friends said, no, it's downtown. Here comes downtown. Give me a break. But, yeah. And if you're in town, we can get together. If not, you keep in touch, and we will. I look forward to the article, and I look forward to the skeleton, or whatever you're going to be sending over. I'll send it off to my daughter, and you'll have her email when I send it to her.
Oh, okay.
And she's in my LinkedIn account. You'll see her background. She's a gift officer for Johns Hopkins Hospital in St. Pete's Beach, St. Petersburg. She's out trying to get people's money to fund the hospital. She was the CEO of 3 brokerage companies, Icon Corp at the Embarcadero, and a couple other ones doing fracking in Oklahoma, and I don't know. She did a lot. And then she ended up becoming the president, CEO of the companies. They're all older than she was, but she's a bright light, and she works hard. Unfortunately, she's got to watch her health as I do. I don't need to have stents put in my heart and a heart attack. But you never know.
Well, it sounds like she's got a good example in you. So, all right, we'll wrap it up, and I'll get on my job. I'll pop that over to you ASAP.
And you mentioned the 9th District Court. Well, the little one, who's half Filipino and me, who's 6 feet tall, I was at her home yesterday in South City, my youngest daughter. And she works for the 9th District Court. And what she does is working from home now, too, and a lot of it is just denying people who are requesting to get out of it. Anyway, I'll talk to you soon. I look forward to the email.
Well, one final point. You know, when you talk about 9th Circuit, I for the life of me, I don't understand this. In Berkeley, for example, you could continue to serve or resume serving 3-day notices to pay rent or quit, but the tenant could certify that they have a COVID-related hardship, which is in direct contravention of a New York Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court law that says you can't self-certify. So that may be another angle to pursue. Is, you know, somebody says that they got a COVID-related hardship, they check a box, and now that the landlord is hamstrung. Now,
and that's berserkly, as they call it, and nothing really gets done over there except they have a lot of meetings. It's a special town with a special breed of tenants. And politicians. Okay, Jim, you take care, and I appreciate your time. And I look forward to Make Me Shine, huh?
Well, make you shine. All right. Appreciate your time. I said 10 minutes, and we're now at 50-some minutes. All right, over and out. Thanks so much.
10-4. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Bye-bye.